A lot of times in the past, I would just scroll on by it because I knew I ain't had no Juniper certifications. Welcome to Debt Free in IT. I'm your host, Mike. This podcast is for anyone who's looking to get into the IT industry, whether it's for a career change or you're just interested. I think you come to the right place. Today's episode stems from a comment that was left under one of my previous videos asking about the value of Juniper certifications. So Juniper, they're a multinational corporation that specializes in networking hardware, software, and other services. They design and sell high-performance networking equipment and software that emphasizes reliability, scalability, and security. So with Juniper, they're similar to Cisco, where Cisco is mainly known for networking but offer other services. Juniper, they're in the same boat. So they're known for networking, but they offer way more services also. And one thing about Juniper is that the cost of Juniper equipment is less than what Cisco equipment costs. So mainly you see a lot of Cisco equipment at large organizations. So usually a large organization, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to be what we like to call a Cisco house. Then so with Juniper, with their equipment being a little bit cheaper, then you could see a lot of smaller organizations opt to use Juniper. So it just depends on the organization and whoever is the head of networking at that organization or whoever was the one that decided on the equipment to buy. So sometimes cost is a major factor with every organization. So if they can get something kind of the same quality but a little bit cheaper, a lot of times they may go for that. So usually you're going to have places where they're utilizing Cisco equipment or they're utilizing Juniper equipment. Dell also makes networking equipment. I think HP makes networking equipment, and Arista also makes networking equipment. So usually they're going to be a mix of all of these companies. So where some of them may opt to just go for one company and utilize it mainly with their products, but they will have other vendors in the mix also, but it'll just be 90% of this one particular company. So with Juniper being a little bit less, you could see a lot of those smaller organizations tend to go for Juniper equipment. And just like Cisco, Juniper also has their own certification track for their products. And then also when you're looking at Cisco, I like to look at Cisco as the big brother in the networking space. You know, they're the one that holds the largest market share. And in most cases, you can't mention Cisco without mentioning networking, and you can't mention networking without mentioning Cisco. So they're kind of like the big brother in the networking space here. Then when we take a look at Juniper, so Juniper is more like that younger brother that does things a little bit different from the bigger brother in order to stand out. So with Juniper, they're more specialized and they have their use cases. So they're more geared towards high performance and speed. Then also you look at Cisco, they're mainly enterprise networking, where Juniper is more seen on the service provider side. So a lot of your ISPs, a lot of them may utilize Juniper equipment. Not saying that they won't use Cisco equipment either, but a lot of times that Juniper equipment, their market share or the people they're trying to target is mainly the ISPs, those that has a need for that high-speed specialized networking equipment. So when taking a look at some of the Juniper certifications, they have the following certification tracks. They have an automation and DevOps, a cloud track, a design track, they have a Mist AI track, and then they also have a security track, and then they have a service provider routing and switching track, and then they also have what's called their enterprise routing and switching track. So this enterprise routing and switching track is the one that I'm kind of going to hone in on today, because this enterprise routing and switching track is the one that aligns closely to the Cisco networking tracks that we have available, where we got the CCNA at the associate level, and then we have the CCNP at the professional level, then the CCIE at the expert level. So with Juniper certifications, they have at the associate level, they have a JNCIA-JUNOS. At the specialist level, they have a JNCIS-ENT. At the professional level, they have a JNCIP-ENT. And then at the expert level, they have a JNCIE-ENT. For those of us who have mainly dealt with Cisco networking certifications, I went out and I did some research just to find the equivalent Juno certification that aligns to the Cisco certification. So when we look at the Cisco CCNA certification, on the Juno side, that aligns with the JNCIA-Junos plus the JNCIS-ENT. So you may see that this is 2 certifications that align to the CCNA. But if you remember a while back, the CCNA certification used to be 2 parts. So I remember when I took it, I took 2 tests. I had the option where I could take 1 test for the CCNA, or I could break it up to ICND 1 and ICND 2. And then once I completed those 2 certifications, I then had the CCNA certification. So when I passed the first certification, I didn't have the CCNA certification. I think it was their entry level cert at that time. I forget the name of it, but it was a lower level cert before the CCST came into place. So it's the one that the CCST took its place. So when I passed ICND 1, that was the certification I had. Then maybe a couple months later, I went into ICND 2 and passed it. Once I passed those 2, then I had the CCNA certification. So when we look at the Junos certifications that aligns to the CCNA, it kind of reminds me of ICND 1 and ICND 2 with the JNCIA Junos and the JNCIS-ENT. And then when we move on to the CCNP Enterprise certification, that aligns to the JNCIP-ENT, which here, if you're someone that deals a lot with Juniper, this may be, I'm not going to say it's an easier route because I haven't looked into what's on their certifications. But one thing I know, once you know networking is networking. The only thing changes from that is learning that particular vendor's equipment, learning how the vendor has things structured. But here, as you all may know, and I know it just because I'm studying for the CCNP, and let me just tell you again, it is a beast. But from that CCNP on the Cisco side of things, you have to pass 2 tests. You have to pass the Encore, and then you have to pass a specialization test in order to become CCNP certified. So with the JNCIP-ENT, it only consists of 1 exam from what I could research, from what my research showed me. So that could be something the Angle says a little easier, but a lot of times it's a lot less stressful if you're taking 1 test to get a certification rather than having to take 2 tests to get that certification. And then moving on to the expert side. So for the expert side, Cisco has the CCIE Enterprise. So that certification is one of the highest standards you can get. So they have it for CCIE. They have them for the networking track. They have it for the security track. They have it for a lot of other tracks. So on the Juniper side of things, that CCIE Enterprise certification aligns to the JNCIE-ENT certification. And then Juniper has went an extra step for those of us that are Cisco certified that may be looking into some Juniper certifications, because I think it's kind of smart too, because if my competitor, I knew that my competitor owned a large share of the market. If I had certifications out, I'm going to figure out a way to make it convenient for someone who has that certification from the person that holds the higher market, find a way to make it convenient for them to go in and get my certification. So, and that's right along the lines what Juniper has done. So in browsing their website, I found a free 7-hour video training series that's intended to help individuals with experience using Cisco devices running iOS prepare for the JNCIA-Juno certification. So this training was designed to help those network engineers who may have a CCNA or they may have that knowledge. It helps them out to learn the Junos architecture and the CLI fundamentals covered on the Junos Associate Exam, the JNCIA-Junos. And also, I'll put a link to this in the description in case some of my fellow network engineers or some of my networking folks is looking at this video. This may be something you want to pursue. You know, this could make you a little bit more versatile when it comes for different jobs and different things that you may be applying for. But I do think that doing this was pretty neat because, like I said earlier, once you know networking, that networking doesn't change. Once you understand how networks works, how network fundamentals, things like that, that ain't going to change no matter who's teaching it. You know, that ain't going to change nowhere. But what you do need to learn is the different vendors, how they have things structured. So just looking at some of the Juno stuff, I can tell that from just doing research and seeing what people are saying about Juniper, I can tell that their CLI, a lot of people like the way their CLI is structured. I know from reading, I saw where they had a commit command, where with Cisco, you know, is when you put in that command and you hit enter, buddy, it's taking effect. So with Juniper, it seems like they have a commit, And also with that commit, they have another feature that checks and makes sure that whatever you're putting in is not going to ruin anything, which I think is a neat fail-safe feature because, it's been plenty of times where I know even myself, when I was in the field and doing networking, there's plenty of times I would put in a command and that command would lock up the whole switch. So it's like, okay, so now you got a way to kind of check yourself, almost like when you do a Windows update or when you download an application on Windows and it tells you that in order for this to take effect, you got to do this, you got to reboot or something like that. So it's almost like that second feature to let you know, say, hey, do you really want to do this now? Or do you know that this is going to happen? Or, hey, we ran and checked this and we see these errors that may happen if you commit to this command. So, which I think that is a pretty nice feature. So this episode was brought to you by the Log Files. So the Log Files is a weekly newsletter to help you start your IT career with practical advice and tips powered by yours truly. So the Log Files, the first release launched last Saturday. So hopefully if you subscribe to the newsletter, hopefully you liked it. Let me know in the comments. You can also reply back to the email. But I try to pack each newsletter with actionable advice, resources, and insights to help you kickstart your IT journey. So I'll put the link in the description as well as pinned in the comments. So don't miss out. Now back to the episode. So the next thing I want to take a look at is the value of these Juniper certifications. So one thing is, we all know the value of Cisco certifications. Like I said, the value of it for me was that CCNA was the one that got me my first job role. And it's the one that got me a lot of my IT jobs. So like I said, it got me that first job at the call center, which I walked out on. So it might well not have got me that one. But then from there, it got me the first role at the hospital where I stayed at for roughly about 10 years. So the value of a Cisco certification, I think, is well known around the industry. So then looking at some Juniper certifications, and I'm sure all certifications have their value. So like I said, first of all, I'm not trying to talk down on Juniper, but a lot of certifications have their value, depends on the use case. One of the value adds I think that someone would get by being Juniper certified as well as Cisco certified or just Juniper certified is that having this Juniper cert, especially if you're certified for Cisco and Juniper. So having this, I think, is going to open you up to more job roles because especially with companies that I like to call them a Juniper house or a Cisco house, meaning that they're utilizing all Juniper equipment for their networking infrastructure, or maybe they're utilizing the majority of Cisco equipment. So if they're utilizing the majority of Juniper equipment, then I think by you knowing both, it's going to mean that you know that Juniper command structure also. I think it's going to make you more versatile to where now you can market yourself to a larger audience rather than just marketing yourself to, you have to go and make sure that this infrastructure is using Cisco equipment. So I think that's one way that the Juniper certification will add value to someone that's already in networking or someone who already has a CCNA and you want to be just more well-rounded. It's going to open you up to that larger audience because now, even though Cisco holds the market share, it's still going to open you up to that other market share that Cisco don't hold, because I do see a lot of jobs that ask for Juniper. A lot of times in the past, I would just scroll on by it because I knew I ain't have no Juniper certifications. But like I said, it will open you up to it. And then also, some companies will still hire you with a Cisco certification, even though they're a Juniper house. So, because a lot of times, like I've been harping this whole episode, once you understand networking, you understand networking. Another value of Juniper certifications is that I'm starting to see that a lot of ISPs prefer Juniper equipment. So mainly because, like I said, Juniper equipment is built for that high speed, high performance. So a lot of ISPs, if you think about it, with an ISP, if you're working at a Windstream, if you're working at a Brightspeed, if you're working at a Spectrum, you got to think you need that high performance. You're going for that high performance. So I could see a lot of ISPs utilizing Juniper equipment. And also just from some of the colleagues I've talked to that may have worked at an ISP before, a lot of them, they seen a mixture of both, where they could have some that's using Cisco equipment, could have some using Juniper. But knowing the Juniper side, like I said, with my first value add, is that it's going to open you up to that larger market. And then also, like I said, if you have the goals of your goal is to go to and work for an ISP, then like I said, getting this Juniper certification I don't think it's going to hurt you. And then the next value add, I think that is if you know that networking is somewhere where you intend to work in. If you know that my goal is to be a network engineer, I don't want to pivot to security. I don't want to pivot to anything else. Then one thing I would do is go out and just learn other networking infrastructures, other networking equipment. So learn some Arista, learn some Juniper. If you have a chance, you may be somewhere where you're using Dell's equipment or you're using HP switches, things like that. A lot of times, I know with Dell and some of HP, which I'm trying to think about, I think it's maybe HP that I'm thinking about. But I know with some of them, the command structure is real similar to Cisco. So you'll see a lot of them where the command structure is real similar. So a lot of times there won't be no large learning curve for you. But if you have time, I would go out and learn this Juniper, at least learn that iOS or take the free training. That way you can put it on your resume and say that, okay, I'm familiar with some Juniper equipment. I may not have managed Juniper equipment in a live environment, but I am familiar with some of their training. I went through some of their training and I have worked with some of their, I see how their iOS is. So like I said, I think the next value add, like I said, if you know that you're going to stay in networking, then going out and getting this certification wouldn't hurt either. And then the next thing I want to look at is the pay. So according to PayScale, the average salary for a Juniper network engineer is roughly around $84,000 a year, which is real close to a Cisco networking engineer. So from PayScale, I think a Cisco network engineer came up around $85,000, which if I'm thinking, that's probably about average, about right. I think that's about right. I know some that if you got more experience, you're probably making way more depending on the company you at. Then that's going to depend on if you're at a private company, a public company, if you're in the healthcare, things like that. So a lot of that goes into consideration. But on average, I'm seeing around $84,000 to $85,000 for a Juniper network engineer as well as a Cisco network engineer. So usually a network engineer title, usually you need to have at least 2 to 3 years of experience. Some organizations may want you to have more. Usually, like I said, you may start out at that analyst or the administrator, and then after you get your 2 years of experience, you may go up to an engineer. So this is roughly from the pay scale. It seems about right, especially for the area that I'm in, which is in the North Carolina area. And then the next thing is, why would you choose one cert over the other? So if you're looking at possibly working for a service provider, then like I said, a Juniper certification could increase your odds of landing that role if that service provider uses Juniper, which some of them may be. Some of them may use a mixture of Juniper and Cisco. So I think that's one reason to choose one over the other. And then also the next one is that if you're already at a company that uses Juniper equipment, most companies, they'll still hire you, even if, long as you got that networking background, they'll still hire you. So if you get hired somewhere where you're used to Cisco equipment and you get hired somewhere that's using Juniper, then it's only right that you go out and educate yourself on that product, because that's going to make your job easier. That's going to make your job a whole lot easier. Then one things that I'm seeing about some Juniper, about their iOS, is that it's not as beginner friendly as Cisco iOS is. So with Cisco iOS, if you go through it a couple of times, a lot of times it gets repetitive, especially with the basic configurations that I'm talking about here. Once you go in, to me, it seems like it's straightforward. If you're used to working on some Linux, you may see some resemblance there. But to me, the command structure is straightforward. So I'm hearing that with Juniper, their command structure is not as beginner friendly. So they do have a lot of perks and a lot of features that a lot of people say is better than the Cisco iOS. So if you're someone that's, like I said, if you're already working somewhere and you have some Juniper equipment, I think it's only right that you go out and educate yourself on that platform. That way, it's only going to make your job easier day by day. So when it all boils down to it, I can't really say that one is more valuable than the other. I can't say a Cisco certification is more valuable than a networking Juniper certification. A lot of it, I would think, is going to depend on your area. So one of the ways I kind of see what's going on in my area is when I look at the job boards. So when I go to Indeed, I'm mainly looking for North Carolina. I'm typing in Cisco, seeing what comes up, seeing what type of jobs comes up. I'm typing in Juniper, see what kind of jobs come up. So a lot of times, you kind of can tell for your area. If a lot of jobs pop up for Juniper, then that may be a sign for you to go and learn some Juniper. If a lot of them pop up for Cisco, that may be a sign for you to go in and learn Cisco. But then if I only had to choose one certification, I'm going to choose the largest. So if I only had to choose one networking certification path to go down, I'm going to go with whoever has the largest market share. In our situation, Cisco has the largest market share. So I would go down and learn Cisco, knowing that once I understand networking, the only thing else that's going to make a difference from me getting a job somewhere that's using Juniper is that I need to learn their iOS structure. So I'm going to learn the largest just because it's going to put more odds in your favor. But then if I need to, I'll go back and learn Juniper's iOS or another company's iOS if that iOS is real different from Cisco. Because with that largest, most of the time, since they do hold the largest market share, you may see the majority of places looking for someone with that experience. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Hopefully you found some value in this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, you can follow me at DebtFreeInIT. If you have any questions, you can email me at debtfreeinit@gmail.com, or you can visit debtfreeinitwithmike.com. Other than that, I'll see you next week. Peace.